Walt Disney was an FBI informant that exposed a lot of people in Hollywood and used the FBI to settle his own personal scores against his enemies. He also used the FBI to cover up his own tracks and devious deeds. All of Walt Disney's FBI files are blacked out because he donated so much to the organization. They had special interest in protecting him and making him appear as a picture of the American dream. Disney hated anyone who wasn't white American. He was very prejudiced against women and believed that after the age of 30, women lost their values and shouldn't even be allowed to work.
During his career, Walt Disney was awarded more Oscars than any other artist in the history of Hollywood. In all, he won no less than 26 Academy Awards.
Walt has been sheltered by everybody, but like the American flag. You don't dare say anything against Walt because he's like spitting on the flag. Walt did a lot of things that were reprehensible and completely unlike the image of Uncle Walt. Uncle Walt was a rascal.
People around the studio called him Uncle Walt, but there was a satirical spin on that because, there are uncles who are a real pain, domineering and controlling, and that was Uncle Walt to most people at the studio.
And nobody crossed him. If they did cross him, they were simply fired.
He was as bigoted a person as I've ever encountered, especially in a position of power. He made no bones about not liking this or that type of people. Somebody hired this very dark. I mean, he was blue, black Hindu. Walt was, walking along the hallway up to his room and, what's that Negro doing around here? Oh, no, he's not a Negro. He's a Hindu. I said, well, he's pretty dark. Get rid of him.
Perhaps the darkest part of his character was how he treated children, specifically the little boys in the industry who had called him Uncle Walt. Today's video has a lot of trigger warnings, but we will get through it together. Hang in there. But first, hey friend, welcome to my channel, Korean Allude, where we deep dive and break down the most iconic stars through history. If you're not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so. And if you're already subscribed, please turn on your notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, without further ado, let's get into this video. Before we even get into his childhood, I want to highlight the cruelest story I have heard from Disney thus far. It is the story of Bobby Driscoll, a child star who had the unfortunate displeasure of being a victim of Walt Disney. A YouTuber named Serena G covered this story so beautifully in her own documentary of the unfortunate endings of child stars. I'll have her video linked in the description so you guys can go support and watch her full documentary breaking down various child stars with such grace. But the story that stuck out to me the most was the story of Bobby Driscoll. Brace yourselves because this one is very triggering.
Bobby Driscoll was discovered in a barber shop at the age of 5, his adorable looks and infectious smile earning him a steady stream of film roles throughout the mid-1940s. He quickly gained the nickname the Wonder Child for his ability to memorize lines and his natural acting talent. Even adults felt intimidated by his abilities. Bobby's freckled face, wide expressive eyes, and upturned nose made him the embodiment of the idealized little boy. He was like a living drawing, so it should come as no surprise he quickly became the first actor ever signed under contract with Walt Disney Studios. His leading role in the smash hit Song of the South made him an overnight sensation, but stardom did not make little Bobby's life any easier. Despite the millions he was bringing home, he could not do enough to please his parents. They were terribly physically towards him and would lock him in a closet for hours at a time. Eventually, the beatings had become so bad that it was noticeable, leaving little Bobby in no condition to shoot, so Disney temporarily moved him in with the family of his co-star, Luana Patton.
Yeah, Bobby Driscoll had a very, very rough childhood. I know that his father used to whack him around a lot and when he was very young, and I know that his parents used to lock him in the closet.
Bobby also celebrated his 9th birthday on the set of Song of the South. Actress Ruth Warwick, who played his mother in the film, claimed she witnessed an adult man inappropriately kiss Bobby Driscoll on the mouth. A Disney executive gave Bobby a kiss. It wasn't on the cheek. It was a big wet one, real sloppy, that lingered far too long. It seemed inappropriate. Later, I started hearing stories, but I won't go into that. You see, I want to continue to work in Tinseltown. Walt Disney himself became fixated on Bobby Driscoll. He referred to him as the living embodiment of his own youth and asserted that they could easily make $1 million off of him. That estimate turned out to be far less than how much the company did wind up making off of him. Bobby, desperate for affection and love, bought into the Disney mythos. Uncle Walt always portrayed the Disney company as a family, and Bobby believed they really were. Bobby had a great deal of love for Walt Disney, and he always did whatever Disney told him to do. Bobby and Luana Patton were again handpicked to star in Disney's next big live-action feature, So Dear to My Heart. Bobby played a naive farm boy trying to raise a black sheep. It also starred Burl Ives as his uncle and Beulah Bondi as his grandmother. The two adult actors would go on to gossip amongst themselves that the attention paid towards Bobby by adults seemed excessive and unusual, that somebody always seemed to have their hands on the boy. Bobby's focus, though, was on the baby lambs. He loved working with animals on set and always seemed to gravitate towards them. So Dear to My Heart proved to be another massive hit, and Bobby and Luana were paired together again in Melody Time and recorded fairy tale record sets for Disney. Bobby Driscoll was on top of the world. He was a big box office draw and in high demand. Studio personnel observed Bobby seemed to have the ability to charm anyone he met. His merchandise made millions, and he constantly appeared in Disney promotional material. He was also lent out to other studios, most notably for the 1949 film noir The Window, which would earn him a Juvenile Academy Award. His success was not undeserved. Bobby seemed to be born for film, despite being overworked, disrespected, and Bobby's enchantment with Disney hadn't wavered. After all he'd ever known was this little boy being screamed at, beaten, and locked away was the norm. To him, exploitation and grooming felt like love. His perception of the world was distorted beyond belief, a bizarre mix of pain, sadness, fear, wonderment, magic, and adoration. He was signed to a new 7-year contract and given a raise, now making $17.50 a week. Hot off the success of Treasure Island, Bobby was made both the voice and live-action model of Peter Pan. Peter Pan, of course, looks exactly like Bobby Driscoll, not just in design, but in the way he's animated. He has his mannerisms, from the way Bobby always arched his eyebrows and scrunched up his nose, to the manner in which Bobby would position his wrists. As Bobby got older, Walt stopped speaking affectionately of him in meetings. He stated Bobby was no longer likable enough to play protagonists. Meanwhile, Peter Pan was released and was a monster hit at the box office and made a killing in merchandise. In 1953, Bobby began to hear rumors he would be fired. He tried asking the higher-ups he was formerly friendly with, but none would speak to him. He went to Walt's secretary asking to speak to Mr. Disney. She refused to call him, and when Bobby asked again, she abruptly told him he was no longer needed and to get out. Stunned, Bobby burst into tears. She called security and had the boy escorted off of Disney property. It was at this point that Bobby's life truly became unbearable. He had been moved from Hollywood professional school to university high school. Away from his peers and in with the general public, he was bullied every day. He was teased and called home slurs for his Disney roles and was beaten up constantly. He became afraid all the time and started self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. He continued to have sporadic acting roles, mainly on television, wearing makeup to cover the acne, which Disney had cited as their official reason for his firing. Jane Wyman, who worked with Bobby both on TV and previously on the radio, told her friend, June Allison, "I had several long talks with Bobby. He's emotionally troubled and needs help. There was something going on between Redacted and Bobby, something that's been hushed up, something that should be investigated. I abhor child." When he was 19, he was arrested for possession of marijuana. In prison, he became a target by the other inmates. When a cute kid gets thrown into prison, rape is inevitable. I think the jailers view it as part of the punishment. Upon his release, he continued to struggle both mentally and financially. Disney, meanwhile, was still profiting off of his face and voice in the form of merchandise of Peter Pan, So Dear to My Heart, Song of the South, and Treasure Island. Bobby never saw a dime from any of this. He became a talented artist in the beatnik scene and eventually fell in with Andy Warhol's Factory. Although he was able to be creative once more, the Factory was notoriously self-centered and indulgent, probably the worst place a mentally scarred addict could find themselves. In an attempt to seek some form of justice for himself, Bobby had began to center on the idea of writing a book about his life. He tried to contact Truman Capote and also approached Arbor House publisher Donald Fine. While pitching this idea, he described to Fine that he'd been sexually abused while working for Disney. Donald Fine later remarked, "I wouldn't touch that story with a 10-foot pole. I don't even know if it's true. Maybe he's just making up the whole thing." In 1961, when he was 24, he was sentenced to a rehab center. The institution was nothing more than a torture facility. While treating addiction as a mental health problem may seem progressive, this was a time when psychiatric hospitals were still performing lobotomies and electroshock therapy. The ideas about mental health were still unsympathetic and misguided. Bobby suffered physically so-called treatment for 6 months. Life never got any easier for Bobby Driscoll. He continued to struggle in every sense of the word. He died on March 30th, 1968, at age 31, without a penny to his name, alone and forgotten. He was found on a dirty cot in an abandoned building. His body was unidentified, and police could not find anyone who recognized him. He was buried in a mass grave unmarked on Hart Island. Eventually, his mother asked Disney to help find him, and he was finally identified through fingerprints, although his remains were not moved to a cemetery, which would have been possible at that time. Disney said nothing on the matter. The public did not learn of Bobby's death until 1973, when Song of the South was re-released in theaters. Reporters discovered what happened when they went looking for the film's stars for a retrospective. Disney still remained silent, although they did re-release Treasure Island the following year. Disney profited from Bobby Driscoll far more than Walt's initial guess of $1 million, whereas Bobby himself was not even afforded the dignity of a funeral. To the studio, he held no value as a human being. He was a product, dehumanized in life and in death. Disney studios continued to thrive, especially as they began to focus more and more on television.
This was just one of the stories, and my friends, there are many more. It has been said that Disney never showed interest in other women aside from his wife. Well, now historians report it is because his interests were in the adolescent boys. I myself have been to Disney World countless times because it's just a thing to do when you're a Floridian. You get an annual pass and go annually, especially if you're in Central Florida. This video is not to discourage people from going to Disney because Disney employs so many innocent and wonderful people here in Central Florida. Even Disney World employs so many people, right? And a lot of immigrants as well. Walter is not even alive anymore to face the consequences of his crimes, and I'm not calling for people to stop going to the theme parks. But what I am saying is to have a little bit more awareness to prevent future children from being taken advantage of, and to protect the young and innocent at the hands of Disney executives and Disney studios. We have seen how the lives of so many Disney Channel stars have ended. It continues even today. We can't let things like this continue much longer, and with knowledge comes a lot of power, and so we must know. But how did he become this way? What is the story of the most powerful man in the world, even after his death? I mean, everyone around the world has heard of Walt Disney and knows of Disney World and Disneyland. Every child and adult dream of one day going to Disney. He has the most recognizable name in the world. I went to Disney so many times in my life, but I've recently went to Magic Kingdom and I cried looking at the parade, meeting all of them. It reminds you of your childhood. Adults cry at the parade. With over 58 million annual tourist visits, Disney World, right here in Central Florida, averages approximately 159,000 visitors per day across all its parks. On average, however, Disney World is estimated to make around 50 million in revenue per day. Did you hear me? 50 million, and that's just at the parks alone. In 2023, the Walt Disney Company generated a total revenue of nearly $32.6 billion with its parks and experiences, an increase of around 16% from the year before. That's just with Disney World. Disney owns networks, studios, production companies, hotel chains, restaurants, merchandise, and so much more. The power they hold is unimaginable if you guys knew just how much Disney owned. But where did it all begin? In this video, we will start from the beginning, his childhood, and wrap it up with some of the wildest controversies Disney has faced thus far. That's how we're gonna wrap it up with a bang. There's a chance this video may run into some trouble with YouTube, so please support this video by liking the video. If you don't have no comment to say, then leave a heart in the video, a black heart for the fallen child stars and all those that were victims of this system. Leave a black heart in the comment and share it with a friend. But let's start first with his childhood. Walter Elias Disney, the man who would forever change the world of entertainment, was born on December 5th, 1901, growing up as the fourth son of Elias Disney, a Canadian with Irish roots. Walt was part of a vibrant family with siblings Herbert, Raymond, Roy, and little sister Ruth. Their lineage traced back to the Normans who had settled in Ireland centuries earlier. In 1906, the Disney clan moved to a farm in the sleepy town of Marceline, Missouri, thanks to Uncle Robert's land purchase. It was here that young Walt discovered his passion for drawing, capturing the likeness of a neighbor's horse. The Disney family was members of the Congregational Church, grounding Walt's early life. Meanwhile, Elias Disney, his dad, ran a demanding newspaper route in Kansas City, which Walt and Roy tackled with dedication. So Walt Disney and his brother Roy would wake up at the crack of dawn to deliver the Kansas City Times. They repeated the grueling task for the Evening Star, a routine that left Walt falling asleep in class, but instilled a work ethic that would serve him well in the future. Disney and his brother Roy woke up at 4:30 every morning to deliver the Times before school and repeated the round for the Evening Star after school. Walt later said that many of the habits and compulsions of his adult life stemmed from the disciplines and discomforts of helping his father with the paper route. And despite the exhausting schedule, Walt found time to nurture his artistic skills. He took Saturday classes at the Kansas City Art Institute, and even pursued a correspondence course in cartooning. These experiences laid the foundation for his artistic journey. In 1918, with a sense of adventure, Walt attempted to join the U.S. Army to fight in World War I, but he was rejected for being too young. But scandalously, he forged his birth date to enlist in the Red Cross as an ambulance driver. Although he arrived in France after the armistice, he kept busy decorating his ambulance with cartoons and even saw his work published in the Army newspaper, Stars and Stripes. Returning to Kansas City in 1919, Walt landed a job at the Pesman Rubin Commercial Art Studio, where he honed his craft by creating illustrations for ads, theater programs, and catalogs. In August 1923, a determined Walt Disney left Kansas City for Hollywood with just a handful of drawing materials, a meager $40, and a completed animated live-action films in tow. His brother Roy was already in California, armed with a little more cash, $250, and a lot of encouragement. Together, they pooled their resources, borrowed an additional $500, and ingeniously constructed a camera stand in their uncle's garage. It wasn't long before opportunity knocked from New York, demanding the first Alice comedy short, prompting the brothers to set up shop in the back of a Hollywood real estate office. Always pushing the creative envelope, Disney launched a Silly Symphony series with the Skeleton Dance. The film was a hit, but the technical demands quickly drained their finances, keeping Disney on the edge of financial peril. Then came 1928, the year Mickey Mouse was born. His first outing was in a silent short called Plain Crazy, but it was Steamboat Willie, the world's first fully synchronized sound cartoon, that truly catapulted Mickey into stardom. Premiering at the New York's Colony Theater on November 18, 1928, Mickey Mouse, with Walt himself providing the voice, charmed audiences with his antics alongside his sweetheart, Minnie Mouse. Mickey's explosive popularity led to a parade of other beloved characters, including the feisty Donald Duck and the lovable canines Pluto and Goofy. In 1933, Disney released The Three Little Pigs. Despite the financial hardships of the early 1930s, Disney's enchanting stories and relatable characters endeared his cartoons to audiences worldwide, transforming his fledgling operation into a thriving business. Walt Disney's relentless pursuit of animation perfection knew no bounds. With his groundbreaking introduction of Technicolor to animation in the Silly Symphonies series, Walt dazzled audiences and clinched his first of 32 personal Academy Awards. 32 Academy Awards, okay?
During his career, Walt Disney was awarded more Oscars than any other artist in the history of Hollywood. In all, he won no less than 26 Academy Awards.
With The Enchanting Flowers and Trees in 1932, his quest for innovation didn't stop there. In 1937, he released The Old Meal, a short film that revolutionized the industry by utilizing the multiplane camera technique, adding a depth and realism that left audiences in awe. On December 21st, 1937, Walt once again shattered expectations with the premiere of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs at the Carthay Circle. This was no ordinary film. It was the first full-length animated musical feature produced at a staggering cost of $1.5 million amidst the Great Depression. The gamble paid off as the film became a timeless masterpiece, cementing its place as one of the monumental achievements of the motion picture industry. Over the next 5 years, Walt enchanted the world with more animated classics like Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, and Bambi. By 1940, Disney's empire had expanded to a sprawling studio in Burbank, bustling with over 1,000 artists, animators, storytellers, and technicians. However, as World War II unfolded, Disney's creative genius took on a patriotic twist. A staggering 94% of Disney's facilities pivoted to special government projects, producing training and propaganda films that bolstered the armed forces. These were complemented by health films that continued to educate audiences globally, courtesy of the U.S. State Department. Amidst this, Walt's team churned out comedy shorts vital for living both civilians and military spirits. Walt Disney's innovative spirit and unyielding dedication not only advanced the art of animation, but also played a pivotal role in shaping cultural and patriotic narratives during one of history's most challenging eras. Walt Disney was a master of blending fantasies with reality, a skill he showcased brilliantly in the 1945 musical features The Three Caballeros, which mixed live action with animation. This enchanting technique was also seen in other beloved classics like Song of the South and The Magical Mary Poppins. Over his lifetime, Disney's prolific studio churned out a whopping 81 feature films, each more captivating than the last. But Walt wasn't just about cartoons and musicals. He had a knack for combining education with entertainment. His award-winning True Life Adventure series, featuring films like The Living Desert and The African Lion, brought the wonders of wildlife to the big screen and underscored the importance of conservation, leaving audiences both informed and entertained. In 1955, Disney took a bold leap into the real world with the launch of Disneyland, a $17 million extravaganza that quickly became the go-to destination for fun and fantasy. By its fourth decade, this magical kingdom had welcomed over 400 million visitors, including a who's who of global leaders and royalty. Never one to rest on his laurels, Walt was a television trailblazer. Diving into production in 1954, he was among the first to embrace full-color programming with Wonderful World of Color. In 1961, shows like the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and Zora became instant hits in the 1950s, capturing the hearts of viewers everywhere. Always dreaming bigger, Walt orchestrated the acquisition of 43 square miles of untouched land in Florida, twice the size of Manhattan, to create a new realm of entertainment. This ambitious project included a theme park, resort, hotels, and his visionary experimental prototype community of tomorrow, Epcot. After 7 years of meticulous planning and 52 months of construction, Walt Disney World opened its gates on October 1st, 1971, with Epcot Center following on October 1st, 1982. Now, in the early days of 1925, a young Walt Disney decided to expand his burgeoning team by hiring an ink artist named Lillian Bounds. Little did he know that this professional decision would soon lead to a personal one. By July of that year, Walt and Lillian were exchanging vows in a quaint ceremony at her brother's house in Lewiston, Idaho. Their marriage, described as generally happy, was not without its quirks. As biographer Neil Gabler noted, Lillian wasn't the type to simply nod along to Walt's whims or bask in his celebrity status without question. Lillian, uninterested in the glitz and glam of Hollywood, preferred the comforts of home, devoting himself to household management and supporting her husband from behind the scenes. Their union was blessed with 2 daughters. Diane was born in December 1933, and they welcomed Sharon into their family in December 1936, having adopted her when she was just 6 weeks old. The Disneys were open about adoption within their tight-knit family circle, but were quick to be angry at any outsiders who brought it up. Ever the protective father, Walt was particularly cautious about keeping his daughters out of the limelight, especially after the infamous Lindbergh kidnappings made headline. And Lindbergh was this rich kid that got kidnapped and was found dead later. So he was very, very cautious. A lot of celebrities and famous people, powerful people, were very cautious after that kidnapping. Determined to shield his family, Walt took great stride to ensure the press didn't capture his daughters in photographs, keeping their lives as private as possible amidst the whirlwind of Hollywood's relentless spotlight.
He met his wife Lillian in 1924, when she arrived from Idaho to work at his fledgling studio. They stayed together for more than 40 years. No one who worked with Disney remembers him showing any interest in other women.
Now let's talk about the strikes real quick. In 1941, the magical world of Walt Disney Productions was anything but enchanting, as it found itself in the midst of a dramatic showdown, the Disney animators' strike. This wasn't just a minor hiccup in the land of fairy tales. It was a full-blown work stoppage that shook the studio for nearly 4 months. What sparked this revolt among the kingdom's artists? It all started when Disney decided to halt the long-standing practice of sharing 20% of profits from short cartoons as employee bonuses. So he cut off their bonuses, right? A decision that didn't sit well with the creative minds behind the magic. Success had smiled upon Disney in 1937 with the blockbuster hit Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which paved the way for a shiny new studio in Burbank, California. But this glitzy new castle came with its own set of problems. Inside its walls, a strict hierarchy ruled where only the studio's elites, writers, and animators could indulge in a restaurant, gym, and steam room. Meanwhile, others toiled away in less glamorous conditions, confined to their own dingy departments, like people that worked on set, etc., that were drawing other animators. You had to be favored by Disney to use these amenities, right? The pay system was also very chaotic, so high-ranking animators could pocket up to $300 a week, which was a lot, while others barely scraped by on just $12 a week. As animators Willie's Powell colorfully put it, he said, and I quote, "There was no rhyme or reason to the paychecks. It wasn't just about the money or a lack thereof. Animators chafed at being forced to sign off on documents claiming they worked a standard 40-hour week, when in reality their dedication often stretched far beyond," end quote, meaning Disney was forcing them to write on paper that they only worked 40 hours a week, but sometimes they would be working 70, probably double that, 50, 60 hours, and they were going uncompensated for it. They were doing the same work as these people that were getting paid $300. Like, you'll sit next to somebody, you're doing the same thing as them. They're getting paid $300 and you're getting paid $12, and you have the same exact credentials, It's not like this person have a master's degree and you just have your bachelor's, the same exact credentials. So people started to feel like, adding fuel to the fire was the simmering resentment over Walt Disney himself taking all the credit for their artistic work. Like, they would not put the artists, the animators, anyone on screen on these movies. Like, how when you watch a movie, they give the credits. Nobody got credit except Disney. When Disney went to get an award, even if it was for best lighting or cinematography or something like that, he'd go up there himself, not crediting anyone who is working on it. And he would tell the employees, if anyone's going to get an award around here, it's going to be me, right? These unsung heroes wanted their names to light up on the screen like the stars they were. Disney didn't even know how to draw Mickey Mouse. It was a running knowledge that they knew that he didn't even know how to properly draw Mickey Mouse. Disney knew how to employ people to do all the work for him, and he didn't do none of the work, but he took all of the credit. The strike wasn't just a fight for their wages. It was a battle for recognition and respect in the house that Mickey built. In February 1941, Disney gathered all 1,200 employees in his auditorium for a speech, and this is what he said, and I quote, "In the 20 years I've spent in this business, I've weathered many storms. It's been far from easy sailing. It required a great deal of work, struggle, determination, competence, faith, and above all, unselfishness. Some people think we have a class distinction in the place. They wonder why some people get better seats in the theater than others. They wonder why some men get spaces in the parking lot and others don't. I have always felt and always will feel that the men that contribute most to the organization should, out of respect alone, enjoy some privileges. My first recommendation to a lot of you is this. Put your own house in order. You can't accomplish a damn thing by sitting around and waiting to be told everything. If we're not progressing as you should, instead of grumbling and growling, do something about it," end quote. The assembly was poorly received, and more employees joined the SCG, which was the union. The next day, on May 29th, more than 200 members of the studio staff went on strike. Disney grew so frustrated that he even hired a mafia boss to scare the strikers, but the strikers held their own and did not allow themselves to be intimidated. Disney was so stressed, he started to develop twitches and tics and developed OCD, where he would wash his hands hundreds of times a day. The strike was resolved when the National Labor Relations Board asked Disney to sign a union contract, and he agreed.
By now, Disney was desperate to end it. He turned to organized crime for help.
Bioff was an organized crime figure. He was part of the Capone mob, and he was very much a known crime figure in this town. But all the studios accepted him and welcomed him in because he was helping them keep out a larger problem, which was unions.
Willie Bioff was a gangster from Chicago. He'd been taking payoffs from studio bosses in return for neutralizing Hollywood's trade unions.
These guys were capable of murder, and they scared the hell out of everybody.
We turned it down because of this guy being a dirty guy, a gangster. So, and the fact that Disney would deal with it, by then didn't surprise us.
The rejection of the Bioff deal had pushed Disney to the verge of a nervous breakdown, developed a series of twitches and phobias, and was washing his hands as much as 30 times an hour.
Roy, his brother, who was far more practical and at this point in touch with reality, settled the strike in 24 hours. He negotiated a settlement with the union, and that was it.
The strike was over, and Disney had lost.
Disney never forgave the participants and subsequently treated union members with contempt, arguing in a letter that the strike cleaned house at our studio and got rid of the chip on the shoulder boys and the world owes me a living lads. Testifying to the House Un-American Activities Committee, Disney alleged that communism had played a major role in the strike, and many of the participants were blacklisted, including Art Heineman, an art director on Fantasia. So, because he worked for the FBI, and the FBI at that time were looking for communists to blacklist, etc. He used that opportunity. A lot of the people that were working for him, the animators that were well-renowned, working for big studios, he made sure not only that they were listed as communists to be blacklisted from working anywhere in America, but they had to go into hiding and flee to London or flee to Paris or, safe places. They never were able to work again. Can you imagine having that kind of pull to ruin people's lives like that? He really ruined lives, and he was just getting back at them. These were innocent people. They weren't communists for real. They were just fighting for equal pay and fair wages, and he had them put on a list. Let's talk a little bit about his character. Disney's public persona was very different from his actual personality. Disney acknowledged the facade and told a friend that, I'm not Walt Disney. I do a lot of things Walt Disney would not do. Walt Disney does not smoke. I smoke. Walt Disney does not drink. I drink, end quote. So it was all a facade. Disney has also been accused of other forms of racism because some of his production released between the 1930s and 1950s contained racially insensitive material.
Well, it's one of our boys. The sun shines bright in my old Kentucky home.
Also, a big ton of gasoline and many firecrackers. So, I lose my face.
Oh, Daruka, come on, step aside, brother. What's cooking around here? What's the good news? What's frying, boy? Just look down here, brother.
And when I say out, Jasper, I mean out. O-U-T, out.
Gabler argues that Walt Disney was not, prejudiced. He never either publicly or privately made disparaging remarks about blacks or asserted white superiority. Like most white Americans of his generation, however, he was racially insensitive, end quote. But many people that worked with him was like, yeah, he was definitely racist, okay? The feature film Song of the South was criticized by contemporary film critics, the NAACP, and others for its perpetuation of black stereotypes. He was also, like we stated, an FBI informant. The New York Times reported in 1993 that Disney had been an FBI informant passing secret information to J. Edgar Hoover, who was his bestie, about communist activities in Hollywood. However, while Walt Disney was made a special agent in charge contact in 1954, FBI officials claimed this was largely an honorary title regularly awarded to members of a community who might be of use to the bureaus.
It was classified as an SAC contact, meaning a contact who is contacted solely by the special agent in charge of the field office. Disney was feeding a lot of information about inside Hollywood to the FBI.
Disney's FBI file runs to around 600 pages and points to a 20-year relationship with the Bureau.
He was also getting really, really cozy with a lot of these Hollywood megastars and getting information against them to give to the FBI. And hence, the FBI would use those information to blackmail those celebrities into pushing their agendas. That's how it worked. And someone as powerful as Disney, he knew he needed protection to do his own crimes, to be secured, and to continue to get filthy rich. He had no problems in exposing and exploiting these stars. And then these stars would then get blackmailed. This is the root of it, to push certain agendas. So when you see stars doing these films or these music videos or these things that they don't necessarily want to do, or pushing out these political ideas, etc., a lot of times these people are getting blackmailed by their own government, by these own agencies to speak away. If you see a person used to speak away or have their beliefs and it drastically change, and they're in the media, always know some people can be bought out of fear of being exposed. And a lot of times they'll put these celebrities in precarious situations. They'll put them in situations that are worthy of being blackmailed, have video evidence, photos, and be like, hey, this is how we're going to destroy you because we have footage. And now with AI, they don't even have to put you in those situations. They can just create those situations with AI. AI has gotten so scary realistic to use your voice, etc. They can put you places that you haven't been, use your voice to say things that you have never said. And they can push the agenda without you here. They could even take your life and still pretend you're here using AI. It's getting really scary, but that's another video for another day. And maybe I'll drop that video on my Mental Gems channel where we talk about AI and what it's already have been doing and the lies that you guys have been believing. But comment below your thoughts on that, okay? But all bad things do come to an end. Disney had been a heavy smoker since World War I. He did not use cigarettes with filters and had smoked a pipe as a young man. In early November 1966, he was diagnosed diagnosed with lung cancer and was treated with cobalt therapy. On November 30th, he felt unwell and was taken by ambulance from his home to St. Joseph Hospital, where on December 15th, at age 65, he died of circulatory collapse caused by the cancer. Due to his fame, after his death, speculations and rumors arose surrounding it. One of the biggest ones that I myself believed when I was young is that his corpse is preserved by staying frozen. This is believed to be true, and it is thought that someday in the future, they will unfreeze Walt Disney to preserve him. Do you think this is true? Like, he was such a genius. We want to pick his brain. Let's freeze him in time before he died. Like, he knew he was going to die. So he said, don't let me die. Freeze me. And once you guys have the technology, unfreeze me and bring me back to life. Where? I don't think that's going to be possible at all. That man is dead, okay? After Disney's death, his brother Ray deferred his retirement to take full control of the Disney companies. He changed the focus of the project from a town to an attraction, and at the inauguration in 1971, Roy dedicated Walt Disney World to his brother. Walt Disney World expanded with the opening of Epcot Center in 1982, and Epcot is one of my favorite parks, along with Animal Kingdom. Walt Disney's vision of a functional city was replaced by a park more akin to a permanent World's Fair. And according to Lafayette Times, overall 91 people have died at Disney in 88 separate incidents. At Disney World, 64 people died from 61 incidents, and at Disneyland, 27 people have died. Some of these deaths are murders, blunt force trauma, people taking their own lives at Disney. Like, who goes to Disney to take their own life? It's the happiest place on earth, right? They were either run over by the rides, decapitation even from the rides, or natural causes, etc., heat exhaustion. Last time I went to Magic Kingdom earlier this year, there was someone that passed out from just the heat and exhaustion from walking all day. And then, you see Disney rushing to bring help. They had medics on site. Now people just pass out all the time. So people die from stuff like that too at Disney. That's real unfortunate. It is illegal to spread human ashes at Disney because it is a private property and they have forbidden it, but that doesn't stop people. That's another weird, creepy fact. It is so common, it happens at least once every month. Ashes have been spread throughout the park, including on the lawns, outside by the gates, flower beds, on rides, during the firework displays, and everywhere you can think of. The Haunted Mansion ride is one of the biggest places people dump ashes and want their ashes to be when they die. Even some of the eye-catching cobwebs in Haunted Mansion collect ashes. And this is weird. I didn't know that because when I went to Disney, I sat on the grass on the lawn when they were doing the fireworks shows and stuff. So I probably sat on some dead ashes and then I brought those people ashes into my car, into my home because it was on my clothes. Oh my goodness, they do that at Disney. This is so weird. So consider that before you sit on the lawns. That's a lot of people bring it in their urns or in water bottles or tightly concealed little bottles. And then it's not gonna, through the system, the metal detector is not going to detect anyone, and people are just going to continue to spread the ashes of their loved ones there. It's just so weird. Comment below your thoughts on that. How do you feel about that? That is so gross. And I probably brought these people. When I read this, I was like, okay, I got to deep clean, deep vacuum, everything, my car, everything. Like, ew, okay? But also, let's end this with a bang. Disney is also known for hiding subliminal messages in their movies. We have seen that all the time, right?
The Rescuers. The Rescuers, Disney's 23rd animated feature, was released in 1977 and introduced us to the Rescue Aid Society, which was an organization that was based in New York and helped abduction victims around the world. Despite its already risque narrative, there's a moment around 38 minutes in when things are equally as controversial on screen. According to Disney, this hadn't been done by the original animators, but during post-production when the film was re-released on VHS. Bianca and Bernard are flying through the city while sitting in a sardine can on top of the bird. And in a background apartment window, there's a clear image of a topless woman. Once it was spotted, they had to recall as many as they could. Disney returned to critical and commercial success with the release of Cinderella in 1950. As usual with Disney movies, a number of comedic characters were added to keep the story lighthearted, and the main two were mice called Jack and Gus. They decide at one point to steal a load of beads. Jack then has the idea of threading them onto Gus's tail, which, watched back now with how the world has moved on, can't be seen as anything other than a certain toy that some people like to play with. When the original Lion King was released in 1994, the world was introduced to the African savannah to join the story of Simba as he grew into adulthood to claim back the throne from his evil uncle Scar. Simba looks up towards the sky during the night, then falls back and kicks up a cloud of dust. As it floats in the air, it seems to arrange into letters and create a word. But what do you think it is? Number 5, The Little Mermaid. Based on the fairy tale of the same name by Hans Christian Andersen, The Little Mermaid was released by Disney in 1989, during the part where Prince Eric and Vanessa are being married. The bishop conducting the ceremony appears to be enjoying his responsibility a little too well when an unfortunate bulge appears. If you don't remember seeing this, it's likely that you've not seen the original version of the film. For recent re-releases, the offending object has been edited over to prevent any more young minds from being corrupted. Number 4. The Lion King promotional poster. The most famous of these is one that was created for the re-release of The Lion King in 2002. At first, nothing seems too unusual about this, but take a closer look at the shape of the nose in the sky. Unsurprisingly, it was withdrawn from use soon after its discovery. Problem was, whether intentionally or not, the image contained something highly controversial for the release of a children's film, and resulted in them having to recall them all and reprint it. It was first spotted by a woman who bought it from a grocery store in Phoenix, Arizona in 1990, and when she returned it to complain, the story was picked up by local media. The cover in question depicts a golden castle in the background. If you focus on one of the spires in the center, you'll almost immediately notice its clear resemblance to a certain body part. The truth, though, according to the artist who drew it, was that he hadn't done it on purpose, but was in such a rush that he only drew that part at 4 in the morning, and probably wasn't thinking straight. Hunchback of Notre Dame. The Hunchback of Notre Dame is another family favorite from Disney and was released all the way back in 1996. Quasimodo befriends a gypsy called Esmeralda, and she helps him escape being arrested and helps him find refuge. Judge Claude Frollo sings towards the roaring fire in his fireplace. Esmeralda appears in it as a vision, but for a moment she appears to be completely naked, with the animators paying particular attention to some of her usually covered assets.
How would you blokes like to make some real money? I'm collecting stupid little boys. The disobedient ones what play hooky from school. I takes them to Pleasure Island. Pleasure Island? Pleasure Island? But them all. Suppose they... No. There's no risk. They never come back as flies. And what's your name? Okay, you know. In you go. And what might your name be?
Alexander.
So you can talk.
Yes, sir. I want to go home to my mama.
Take her back. She can still talk.
Please, I don't want to be a gypsy. Let me out of here.
You boys have had your fun. Now pay for it. Boys.
So that's one of the things that Disney throughout the years have gotten a lot of backlash for. They'll encode some messages, and this is supposed to be marketed towards children, but this is what they're doing behind the scenes. And this is why I say hide your sons, hide your children, because this is just a cruel thing. And Disney is one company you cannot talk bad about, you cannot go against. They're the biggest corporation in the world globally, to me, in my opinion, the most powerful too. They're just very, very powerful. They run things, they run governments, they run agencies, they run everything. Disney and Florida here runs everything in Florida. They basically are the government here. They run everything. Our economy is purely dependent on them. They have their own police system, their own police station. Okay, everything. It's kind of like the Vatican. If you go to Italy, the Vatican is its own little country, and within a country, it's its own little small entity. You know, that's kind of how Disney is, and it's crazy. And they're crazy powerful. You try to sue Disney, are you crazy? You better have the best of the best lawyers, because they will come after you, and they know how to silence people. And you have to be very, very cautious when talking about these people. But hey, at the end of the day, the Lord sits on his throne. Amen. Amen. But I love you guys so much. Comment below your thoughts. If you have no thoughts, then leave a black heart in the comments. And please thumbs up this video and share. Let's push it through the algorithm, because you know how they like to play. And I will see you in the next one.